Hey, this is Notser, and today we're going to be talking about some proposed balance changes coming to the game client in 10.4. It's very interesting game changes, and ones that I think are, they're not without some controversy. I'm sure there's players that are viewing this right now that disagree with something on this list. So I'm going to go through it, leave my thoughts on it, and whether I am for or against it. And in the comments, you guys can provide your own opinions on the situation, and we'll go from there. So 10.4, we know we're in the public test server stage. I think round 2 testing just went live, and we got like a couple days to do that. So it's interesting because this might be coming fairly soon. So first up, we've got the Thunderer. The Thunderer, of course, legendary for being very powerful in the game right now. It is receiving another nerf to the main battery firing range. It's going from 23 to 21.5 kilometers. 1.5 kilometer nerf. That is not the only nerf that's happened to it before, though, in this category. I believe it had 24.1 or 23 point. It had maybe a kilometer more than 23. And as Wargaming creeps the range closer and closer to maybe the ideal situation for the Thunderer, I am someone who views this as a good thing. I understand that there are Thunderer players who want to sit at max range and fire their high explosive. I get it. But you can't do that. High explosive for the Thunderer is just like SAP, and all of the Italian battleships all have shallow range because it is so easy to use, and I feel that's the same for the Thunderer. And honestly, Thunderer has some great qualities that are never used by a lot of players, with the improved rudder response time and the concealment on top of it, so it can play closer in normal combat than even the Conqueror. So yes, I think that this is a healthier version of the Thunderer. Yes, it doesn't get a scout aircraft to extended range, but I think it doesn't need that. It's got the maneuverability, the concealment, and the firepower to be very scary. And then on top of that, you can always extend the range if you want to with the module. It's a tier 10. The Stalingrad is receiving a surveillance radar duration nerf from 25 to 20. It used to be 30, and it's gone all the way to 20. I think 20 is much more in line with where the Stalingrad exists at in the form of this game as it has evolved. This is very similar to the Petro, obviously not exactly the same as the Petro, but it's a large, tanky Soviet cruiser with a large gun caliber. It having long duration radar was an unfair advantage compared to something like the Petro. And I think that the Petro's 15 is just right. I think that, yes, it's annoying to get radared, but it's so short, he really only has one chance to fire. And I appreciate that. So I think that's going to make the Stalingrad feel a little bit more in line. I understand it's for steel. I understand the Thunderer no longer is for sale, and it was for coal. But what if, what if they were able to balance these ships so they were perceived as balanced and the spreadsheet would bear it out? Maybe they reintroduce them for sale. Now, obviously, the Stalingrad's still available, but you get the idea for the Thunderer. Next up, the Flint. The Flint is receiving an 800 meter buff to the gun firing range. Thank you. Might need another 800 meters to really feel perfect. I guess as compensation for that, they nerfed the reload by 0.2 seconds. It's not really a big deal considering it needs the range buff. It's kind of like, do you want to be ineffective to not effective at all with 11.1? Or do you want to give up a little bit of that gun reload to have a little bit higher chance of being able to do something? Obviously. I would like them to go a step further and extend the range, maybe one more, and I think it'll be good. And if they need to, nerf the gun reload, that's fine. The Flint right now just really isn't viable because of the gun range, and you can't buff it in the game right now. The Grozovoy torpedoes will be receiving a damage boost of 1.1 thousand damage, or 1100 damage, 1.1 thousand. 1100 damage, and the probability of flooding is increasing. The torpedoes are kind of disappointing, and they're still disappointing, and I don't know that I necessarily care too much about these changes for the Grozovoy. They're just so shallow range, long reload. You're a gunboat with high gun velocity. It means you have to come in range. I'm glad the changes are there. I just don't know how actual meaningful changes they are. Speaking of meaningful changes, 52, the Z or Z52, is getting a main battery reload buff of 0.2 seconds. That seems awesome. For me personally, the 52 is already effective, and this is just going to make my play even more. I already use Gunther Luchins on this ship, and the reload activation's nice. The reconnaissance is absolutely awesome. It's really a nice ship, and it works well with that commander. So I think having improve is going to make it play better. Is it going to be perceived as balanced or maybe even overpowered after these changes? I would say no. I think it's going to start becoming like part of the conversation, and we can go from there. The Jutland is receiving torpedo tube reload nerf of 8 seconds from 125 to 133. Not a big deal. The bread and butter of the Brits is your guns. Giving up a little bit on the torpedoes, not that big. The Xinjiang is receiving a range boost of 300 meters on the torpedoes and a speed boost of 3 knots. Same with the Changmu. They're getting the exact same buffs on their torpedoes. A welcome buff. Might need a little bit more range on the torpedoes, maybe 10, but I think that's a good start. I think they could obviously stand to get more, and we'll see if they do at some point in the future. Binyang is getting a reload buff of 0.3 seconds. That's nice. This is the one that's kind of like the Ognivoy, though. Doesn't really have a lot of guns, I think. Plus, it's kind of the weaker premium of the two, between the Luoyang and this. The Gustav Julius Merker, the GJM. GJM is getting a reload buff of 0.4 seconds. Not bad. Very happy with this change. Don't have much comments. It's great. The Tier 9, Felix Schultz, is also getting a 0.4 second buff to the gun reload. This is going to make these guys even scarier. I'm surprised that the Tier 7 didn't receive a similar buff, because it is even worse than the Tier 8. And I think the Tier 8 is bordering on average to good. The Tier 9's better than that. So I think this is making it good to great, and the Tier 10, we'll go from there if they change or have changed. I'm not familiar with the reload exactly on that Tier 10 versus the Tier 9 and whether the changes are going to affect that. But I'm happy they're making these changes because it really is all about the guns on these, and they need to be effective. And honestly, they are. They're very nice from a broadside, flattening, aiming standpoint, APHE. Very excited to see if this makes it even more appealing for players and where these guys go. The Cleveland is receiving a surveillance radar nerf of 3 seconds, 30 seconds to 27. I don't really think of the Cleveland as too overpowered, but it is a 3-second nerf. It could end up being just right. This could be more helpful for lower tier than higher tier situations. That might also be the reason why they're making some of these changes on some of these ships. Feeling like, it's not too strong against an 8, 9, or 10, but it is too strong against a 7, 6, and a 5. Or doesn't even play 5. It doesn't play a 5. But yeah, a 7 and a 6, it might be too strong for that, so that's cool. Leander is receiving multiple nerfs for some reason. Main battery reload, 0.2 seconds from 7.5 to 7.7. The smoke generator is getting nerfed as well. Activation is only going to be 96 seconds versus 99. Now, from my point of view, this is really about the Fiji getting a nerf and making sure that the Fiji's nerf doesn't make it worse than the Leander. That's how I'm interpreting this. So 7.5 to 7.7. Fiji is well known for being very effective at Tier 7, so it's not taking too much away from a very effective ship. Smokescreen as well, 106 to 99, so it's just slightly better than the Tier 6, but not better than the Tier 8. The Edinburgh actually gets a mirror on the smoke dispersion, so 7 seconds off of the dispersion time for the Fiji and the Edinburgh. That might mean one less puff of smoke, and that might mean one one open opportunity to punish. Is it enough? I don't know how much this is going to make a change on these guys. I'm curious to see the light cruisers for the Brits. I did not feel like the light cruisers for the Brits needed this, but I will admit that the Fiji is very popular and very successful, so maybe they were just afraid of it. The Petropavlovsk is getting a reload nerf of 0.5 seconds from 13 to 13.5. This is a good change. I think the Petro honestly comes across as having a little bit too fast of a reload for the amount of armor that it has. I think that this will go a long way to bringing the Petro more in line from a balance standpoint, perceived balance of other players. You know, you can't have armor, firepower, utility, and everything in between. You can't all have everything. So I think for the extra armor that it has and the low profile, giving up on its reload is fair. The Nagato is getting a 1 second buff. Might need another buff, but 1 second. Okay. The tier 5, 6, 7, and 8 Italian battleships are receiving direct buffs. The tier 5 is going to get a reload buff of 1.5 seconds from 31.5 to 30 seconds. Nice. I don't know if that's enough. I do think that the mid-tier Italians are the hardest to play, so I do think they stand to benefit more from changes positively than, you know, maybe a tier 9 or a tier 10. So I'm happy for mid-tier Italian changes. Andrea Doria, the sap damage is going up from 95 to 99. Effectively, that is a change of about 130 damage per shell. After you calculate not getting a citadel and, you know, doing 33%. So 130 extra damage per shell could mean, you know, 3 to 5 shells on the target. That's, you know, 500 more damage or 900 more damage or however much more damage you think. It could set up a different scenario. It's a nice change and maybe it'll help it increase its damage output. The tier 7 is receiving a Sigma parameter buff, 1.6 to 1.7. Desperately needed this. Don't know if it's enough, but it's going in the right direction, so I'm happy for that. Veneto, the tier 8, also receives the same buff. Definitely needed it, and definitely don't know that it's enough, but at least it's going in the right direction. We'll play a patch or two, and they'll decide, and they'll make changes again. The Tiger 59 is receiving 360 gun turrets. That's a pretty cool change. I don't necessarily think that it's going to make the Tiger a must-buy, but it's a nice change, quality of life improvement, bringing that into a premium tier 8. Cool. I'm cool with that. For me, the highlights are the Italian battleships, the tier 7 and the tier 8 getting Sigma buffs, Petro getting nerfed, I think probably fairly. The Gunboat DD's getting a gun reload. That's nice. The Pan-Asians getting a buff. It's been a while. The 52, I just laugh at it getting a buff because I already play a lot of it in rank and it's very effective, so I'm all for that. It's cool with me. And then the Thunder and the Stalingrad. The Thunder and the Stalingrad are probably the most controversial because they are such high-tier ships, stealing coal, and eventually you're going to get to a point where someone complains and says, "You've changed this so much, I don't want it anymore," and demands a refund, you know, right now. I honestly think that's okay, because it's more important that high-tier games are balanced and in line than it is for every single player to feel like they have absolutely gotten their value for their time spent playing the game, in the case of steel and coal. So I'm very happy for those changes. I'm interested to see the other changes, and we'll see if the changes themselves lead towards a healthier version of the game. I am definitely not someone who believes that this is all the game needs to be the best game on the market, of course. But I do appreciate that Wargaming is willing to make changes, and they're willing to do it in a way that doesn't break the game. These are very small changes. You might not even notice some of these changes unless it was highlighted for you. So I appreciate it. I want the game to grow. I want the game to succeed. That's the most important thing for me. because I think that it's a fun game, and I honestly hope that other players get a chance to enjoy it. If you guys have any comments on any of these changes, ask in the comments, and I will take a look at them, and we'll see what everyone else has to say about it, whether they're for or against, and whether they feel like that's the right type of changes. I appreciate everyone tuning in. If you enjoyed this video or you like the discussion, please like the video. If you dislike it, dislike it. You could subscribe to my channel. We do World of Warship videos similar to this, or gameplay, or for new release, or down the line. We'll get back to down the line and matchups. You can use my North American recruit invite. It's on the screen. You can take advantage of that. I stream at twitch.tv/Notser. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.